shooting update. Police sorting out the motive. Here's Trevor Ault.
We're trying to get some more details on the motive of the shooter. While sources have told us that he was told he was going to be fired, there's still, of course, a lot of questions as to what would lead a young man like this to commit such a heinous act, especially when, as we heard from these former employees at the bank, that, at least in their opinion, they did not see any red flags.
Yeah, he's identified as 25-year-old Connor Sturgeon. Think twice about using free charging stations in airports, hotels, or shopping centers. That new warning from the FBI. Agents say criminals have figured out ways to use public USB ports to infect your device by loading tracking software that exposes your personal information. Teresa Payton is a cybersecurity expert.
With that tampering, they could install malware or monitoring software on your device, which could allow them to see things like usernames, passwords, who you choose to bank with. That's all very problematic.
Now, the takeaway here, bring your own cord, use a power outlet to charge your device, not a USB charging station. Court challenges well underway to determine the fate of the abortion drug mifepristone. More than 400 drug company leaders releasing a statement condemning the ruling by a Texas judge to ban it. They say his ruling invalidates the work that the FDA undergoes to approve drugs to the market and that the ruling could have widespread damaging effects on other drugs. Rachel Scott with more.
In the meantime, you have several Democratic-led states that are now taking matters into their own hands. They're stockpiling this abortion medication. Massachusetts, for instance, buying 15,000 doses, enough to last an entire year. But this is a legal fight that is only just beginning. It is widely expected to go all the way to the Supreme Court.
That's the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Well, the helicopter got me here. Not really. Wish I had a helicopter today.
Absolutely. You'd get through traffic in that, man.
Oh, I wanted a Sherman tank today. That's frankly what I wanted.
Fully loaded, too.
So I'm here. My blood pressure was up in the 200s, but I made it. Hey. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Dez Dickerson, the new kid, back with you again today. Happy to be here. Yesterday, and I've been trying to remember. Maybe one of you guys can help me with this. There was one of the suspense sci-fi movies where they're hunting some large either fish or sea creature, and they decide they're going to hook it and they're going to catch it and bring it in. And this thing decides to dive deep, and it takes the boat down. I can't remember for the life of me what that movie was. But at any rate, what matters is the analogy. Who cares about the movie? It was probably a bad movie anyway.
I was going to say Jaws.
Yeah, that's the only one I can think of.
I think it had to be Jaws, but there was another one, like The Meg or something.
Like Sharknado.
Yeah, what Sharknado.
I think, it is The Meg.
I think it's The Meg. So the thing that occurred to me is that yesterday I kind of, like The Meg, I kind of just took the hook and I just kind of went deep. It's right off the bat, I just went deep. And I didn't pull the boat down, though, I don't think. But today we're gonna stretch a little bit before we start running. You know what I mean? They say that the older you get, you should stretch 1 minute for every year older than, I don't remember what it is, 40 or something like that. Which means if I'm going to do something, I have to start stretching the Tuesday before, because it's like I got to stretch how much for how long? But we're going to stretch a little bit. So, one of the things that I teach my kids, and I'm an adjunct at one of the fine universities here in the area, and one of the things that I teach my students is it's important to find out what you are, to learn about yourself, to look for the clues. Calling always leaves clues. And with that, map out your DNA. I don't mean the literal, helix, but the DNA of who you are. Map it out, know what it is, and then do what you are. Do what you are. We send kids to school. We tell them, hey, find something that you can do and you can make a lot of money and you can buy a boat and whatever. And I got nothing against making money and buying boats. But if you do what you are, you always have your best chance of not just succeeding, but excelling. So I advise people, do what you are. It's the key. The thing that I teach as an adjunct is I actually teach performance, get on stage and perform. And one of the things I teach is that the key to authenticity as a performer is to do what you are. Not to get up and do what you're not to engage in identity theft. And, I'm a big fan of Taylor Swift, so I'm going to get up there and just be, Taylor light. No, find out what you are and go do what you are. So I'm hearing my own words, as I'm doing this and as I'm embarking on this, amazing sort of, through the looking glass opportunity that I've had here this last couple of days. And I need to eat my own dog food. I need to do what I am. I need to remember to do what I am. There are some unbelievably just highly experienced and incredibly talented folks at this station that I'm trying to learn from quickly. Folks that have, been doing this for a long time and are extremely accomplished. But if I try to be them, all I can do is I can be the best imitation of them that I can be. So I'm trying to learn on the fly how to do what I am in this context. As I mentioned yesterday, I'm a music business baby. Started, playing professionally at age 14. I was the original guitarist in this little band called Prince and the Revolution, and spent many, many years, actually more years after kind of semi-retiring from the stage on the label side. And I went to the dark side and became an A&R VP. But the bottom line is I've been on radio a lot over the years. And, somewhere in the world, somebody's playing Little Red Corvette right now. But there's a huge difference, as I said yesterday, between being on the radio or being around radio and doing radio. So I'm grateful for being around people that know how to do it, and I'm learning from them. You know, Elvis Costello said a while back, I don't remember when it was, but it's a famous quote. He said he had 20 years to write his first record, and then he had 6 months to write the second one. And I'm kind of feeling that way between like yesterday and today. You know, I had a lifetime, a lifetime to get ready for yesterday.
This first show, I've got piles of material.
There's all that. Well, you know, if I was ever on the radio, I'd say this.
Yeah.
I'd do this. But then today it's like, well,
I did those things.
I did those things. You know, kind of emptied the clip yesterday. So anyway, all this though feels very familiar because I mean, my whole life. You know, I kind of had my first show to do what I did or my first album or my first whatever. And from there on in, you know, you're just kind of figuring out how to do the same thing but do it better and do it different and so on. So, you know, the other thing that occurred to me, and I'm still stretching, so bear with me, is that, you know, I speak every week. You know, I actually pastor or lead a church that meets online, got shut down by COVID, and for the last couple of years, you know, we live stream. So speaking for 45 minutes or an hour, comfort zone, not a problem. 3 hours, totally different animal. You know, some of the wax on, wax off, you know, a little Karate Kid reference there. It's very similar, but some of it's very different. So again, I'm learning as I go, and I'm getting the opportunity to learn publicly. You know, so that means, you know, if you step on the rake, you do that publicly too. But again, glad to be here. Looking forward to what we have going on today. A lot going on in our world, as is always the case. And, you know, once again, let the cartoon begin. You know what? Let's go to break a little early and play some cool music on the way.
I try.
Damage control at the White House and a new report about rising sea levels says the U.S. is at risk of flooding in the decades ahead. We'll tell you about it coming up at 9:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
I mean, we will, and a lot more. And thank you to Ken and to Mac the Nice, who has my back here. You know, it's interesting. And it's always this way, you know, from sort of generation to generation. There are things that we grow up with, you know, and consequently just give no thought to. Other things, innovations that come along during our lifetime, and every generation grows up hearing the generation before talking about, well, in my day. And here's the thing. You say to yourself, I'm never going to say that. I'm never going to sound like that. Shoot, one day you hear your dad's voice coming out of your mouth or your mom's voice, you know, or sometimes it's your dad's noise, like when you get up out of a chair and it strikes you, that's my dad's noise I just made. So there's always stuff. There's always generational stuff. You know, we have, as part of the fabric of our lives, for better or for worse, we have social media. And think about it. That whole social ecosystem did not exist. And it wasn't that long ago, you know, early 2000s. I can't remember what year MySpace launched. And they weren't the first. There were a couple of sort of failed attempts, some other platforms before that. But first one that really got traction was MySpace. And, you know, Facebook was originally obviously the Facebook, and it was strictly a college kind of a platform. But now it's beyond ubiquitous. You know, now it's literally, you know, part of our cortex. And so because of that, we have sort of, you know, preferences, and we have our go-tos, and we have our protocols and our habits and our patterns. And you know, some people are Twitter people. I call them twits. No, not really. Some people are Facebook people. You know, some people are Instagram people. Some people are WhatsApp people. And I think they're a little paranoid and a little bit conspiracy driven, but that's just me. So, you know, from the standpoint of engagement and connection, all that to say this, from the standpoint of engagement and connection, I'm more of a Facebook person than a Twitter person or any other platform. Instagram, I understand its value, and you know, as a marketer, because that's another hat that I've worn for the last 10, 12 years. You know, it's an engagement platform that's highly trafficked and whatever, but at the same time, it can tend to be the place where voyeurism meets vanity. You know, but that kind of limits the bandwidth of it in terms of, you know, depth and so on. But Facebook and Twitter, you know, even though people will say, oh, yeah, I'm not on Facebook anymore, people are lying because they're still on Facebook. But at any rate, it's like Facebook, Twitter. So I'm more of a Facebook person. I prefer the ability to sort of share long thoughts as opposed to sound bites, as opposed to, you know, one-ups and gotcha and whatever. And the makeup of my sort of Facebook community it's like a mini polling algorithm. You know, part of the value of it is as things, you know, as the ebb and flow, as the whoop and wharf of culture and society are happening, I can kind of see in my timeline this natural sort of pole that emerges. Because I have, you know, one set of friends whose outrage meter will sort of ping in one direction, you know, with respect to issues and topics and so on, and another set that will ping in the other direction. So it's kind of like, oh, you automatically have this sort of de facto pole. So, you know, you see the repetitive sort of sharing of memes on either sides of issues, and it just kind of, you know, creates this impromptu polling data. So all that to say this. And this is a topic that, you know, we're all covering, and I'm going to give you my take on it this morning, or you know, some take on it this morning. But much has been said. You know, a fair amount of outrage has been expressed on both sides of this whole, you know, Bud Light kerfluffle. Much has been made of, the Kid Rock thing and him, busting a cap in a case of Bud or whatever, rather than twisting a cap off a Bud Light. And, I thought one of the oddest things, though, Howard Stern expressed like consternation. He said he was dumbfounded. That's the word he used. He was dumbfounded by Kid Rock's protest. Personally, I didn't find his response, I didn't find the prospect of Kid Rock having that kind of response at all surprising. I didn't find his reaction shocking at all, because that's absolutely on brand for him. Now, if it had been Cardi B or, Pat Boone, whatever, if it would have been somebody else, now that would have shocked me. That would have surprised me. But Kid, really not so much. So in addition to Kid, kind of the tip of the spear in this thing was Travis Tritt pulled Anheuser-Busch, specifically Bud Light beer, from his rider. And every artist, you understand the centrality of your hospitality rider. Let me tell you, it's something that you labor over. In the early days, you have no rider. I remember playing a club, just an iconic club in New York City years ago. It's been gone for a long time now, called the Peppermint Lounge. There's an old song from the 60s that talks about the peppermint twist. It's a reference to the Peppermint Lounge. I remember the first time playing the Pep, and I thought, man, we've arrived. And this was after I'd left Prince, and I was pursuing this solo career that ultimately went so low it was never seen again. But we walk in, and our road manager said, so did you get our rider? and dude looked at us and said, you should have eat before you came. So much for that. But as you matriculate through the ranks, you get to the point where, you can name your terms, and you can come up with your rider, your technical rider, and your hospitality rider, and ask for what you want. That, Van Halen famously had the no brown M&Ms clause in their rider, and so on. So Travis Tritt pulled Bud beer from his rider. And he says that he knows a lot of other artists that have done the same thing, but they're not talking about it publicly. They're concerned, maybe even afraid to say so publicly. And we talked yesterday about the unreality cohort, and we talked about the sort of terroristic tactics of trying to delegitimize. Some people say delegitimize. I think we've changed that word. They will flame you online. They'll try to cancel you. All these kinds of things if you oppose the narrative. So, yeah, I understand, folks that make their living as public brands want to avoid, being in that crossfire if they can. But, according to Travis, there are a lot of folks doing it that just aren't talking about it. So now, though, the heavyweights have weighed in. Now it's the influential voices that have weighed in. Noodles Wasserman, guitarist from The Offspring, tweeted that they're going to add Bud to their rider in response. Evidently, they didn't have Bud on their rider before. They're going to add it. The Offspring. Remember The Offspring? 90s, punk band, California punk band. Not, California punk was different than New York punk, was different than London punk. London punk was kind of the OG punk, that whole 77, 78, Sex Pistols, The Clash, that whole thing. But anyway, California punk. California punk had more hair gel. I think that was the deal. So The Offspring, they've weighed in. So here's the other thing that's kind of weird about that. And just kind of ride with me here. So who says guitar players aren't deep thinkers? Huh? Who says that guitar players can't be socially conscious, as well as sometimes being unconscious from whatever was in the rider? So, on the other hand, Let me share this thought. It's kind of lame that it wasn't Dexter Holland. He's the lead singer in the band and the most visible guy. He's the guy that gets the most screen time in the videos. It's kind of lame that he wasn't the one speaking for the band. You know, back in the day, I would expect, you know, Freddie Mercury to speak for Queen, you know, not John Deacon. In fact, I don't know if John Deacon ever spoke, you know. I don't think he was mute, but I don't think he ever spoke. So anyway, Needles also suggested that Tritt and others who dropped Bud were motivated by bigotry to do so. Motivated by bigotry. And again, we talked yesterday about the demonization retaliation that comes from this cohort, this sort of, you know, cabal on that particular ideological side of the fence. And, you know, if you cross them, they're going to call you a bigot, a sexist, a racist. They're going to call you a homophobe, a transphobe, and so on. So Noodles went on to say that they're going to be adding Anheuser-Busch products and Jack Daniels to their rider. Quote, just to piss off a bunch of dim-witted bigots who fear what they don't understand. Well, all right then. So now it's really on. Now this thing is it's busted wide open. So yesterday, they announced that the stock price of Anheuser-Busch has dropped as a result of the brouhaha. And that as that takes place, I guarantee you that news strikes fear in the hearts of the shareholders. I don't know that you know anything that Noodles is saying is striking fear in the hearts of whoever he's saying it against. But, you know, I'm not checking with Noodles. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We'll be back in a minute.
I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Another couple of beautiful days ahead before some slight changes in the forecast. Weather, I should say. Full forecast coming up in 2 minutes. Governor Lee right now asking the legislature for 3 things in the wake of the Covenant School shooting. He's giving a speech at the Midtown precinct, and he says one of these things he wants is a new order of protection. He says will protect all Tennesseans by keeping firearms out of the hands of dangerous individuals. Says he's going to sign an executive order later today ensuring the sharing of information when it comes to buying firearms. And the White House doing damage control after the discovery of dozens of highly classified U.S. intelligence documents that might have been posted on social media sites. ABC News says it's learned that the documents contain information about Iran's nuclear program and North Korea's missile program. That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. I've had a financial radio show on WTN for over 20 years. But before that, for about the first 10 years of my career, I worked for a big investment firm. The name of the game was selling and getting assets under management. Then I was introduced to evidence-based investing, driven by academic research and not the sales process. 2 big revelations. One was that investing in the stock market wasn't a gambling adventure. I had never thought about it that way. You know, think about when we invest, you're just gambling your money away and just throwing it into the casino. Well, investing in stocks is really just owning companies. And you think about some of the most successful people in the world are business owners, and you get to be a business owner when you invest in the stock market. It allows you to be part owner of the most successful companies in the world. The second had to do with how you were investing in those companies. In my former role, I was taught that my job was to use my skills to predict the future. Oh, crystal ball, what stocks or market segments are going to do best in the near future? If you listen to investing news sources and investment advisors, you'll find that making predictions is the rule rather than the exception. One recent study shows that 93% of professional managers underperformed the market over the past 15 years in their selection of large U.S. stocks. and it was over 95% that underperformed with small companies. Did you know that you could be tremendously successful as an investor without predicting the future? I believe the first step is education. However, it can't be just any education. We will help you understand what you're doing with your investments, why you're doing it, and what the basics are behind how things work. Then we make recommendations. I want you to be completely confident before you do anything. If that sounds like a winning game plan, set up a free 15-minute phone call at any of our 10 offices around Nashville. Go to paulwinkler.com to schedule a call today.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I love this song.
My Chemical Romance.
So good, man.
See, I'm the world's oldest emo kid, and I'm not even ashamed of it.
Let's go.
Yeah, exactly. Man, I loved all the variants. I loved Screamo.
Same.
I loved like Story of the Year. There's a band called Finch. That's the
Ooh,
band
okay.
that Finch, actually, they're the godfathers of Screamo. The first, like, real Screamo song recorded, really, was them. So anyway, I'm a big emo kid. So My Chem, I love it. I'm not okay, you know, and I think a lot of people are kind of in that place right now. I'm not okay. The unedited version. So, you know, one of these days we're going to find out that the nuclear launch codes have been posted on Reddit. Because you get that feeling, it's like things get leaked and stuff is in people's garages, and you know it's a bit cavalier, as they once said. So anyway, back to Bud Light. So, you know, the Offspring are adding Bud and Jack Daniels to their rider, and I'm sure that news alone is going to bring back the stock price. But you know, there's this sort of sidebar issue of celebrities or people who are in some way, shape, or form visible, you know, famous, whatever the case might be, of utilizing that platform as a means of amplifying whatever their particular pet issues or perspectives may be. Now, the reality is that there's a lot of unreality on the, as we say, that the Hollywood side. But, you know, we pick on the city of Hollywood, but there's, you know, geographically there's plenty of unreality to go around. But in the entertainment business, where interestingly, more people spend less time dealing with real life than anywhere else, that's where folks want to make statements about reality, about the world in which we live. And, you know, some people find themselves annoyed by it. Some people find themselves out and out angered by it. There are some famous people, Michael Jordan, for example. Michael Jordan never talked about his politics. Nobody really knows what Jordan's politics were, except, you know, I'm sure those closest to him. But he's quoted as having said, you know, well, why don't you get involved in it? Because, you know, black people are expected to be Democrats. You know, it's just this expectation. You're expected to, you know, play basketball and be a Democrat. Anyway, so Jordan famously said, if this is indeed an actual quote and not an urban legend, that, well, you know, Republicans buy sneakers too. And that's a smart thing. Similarly, you know, Tiger Woods for years was that same way. Didn't really, we don't know what his politics were. And then you have folks on the other hand, like LeBron won't shut up about his politics. And he has the freedom to do that. You know, I'm not hating on that. He has the freedom to do that. But he's kind of the other cohort where it's like, because I'm famous, I have a responsibility to speak out. Especially when it comes to, you know, the acting profession. Personally, I'm a little reluctant to take seriously as significant voices in the culture people who play make-believe for a living. And again, you know, I'm not hating. There's no shame. You know, we're getting involved in our company. We're getting involved in the film business now, and it's, you know, there's actually an amazing sort of an opportunity to impact and influence people. Now, does it go too far at times? Are we sick of certain messages being crammed down our throats in, you know, children's movies? Well, yeah, but there's this long tradition of famous people, quote unquote, famous people, feeling a responsibility to speak out as voices in crisis. But the issue is, fame doesn't really make you smarter. Fame doesn't make your voice more significant in the conversation. But, you know, there's a tendency, especially in the media, there's a tendency to treat it that way. Anyway, I just wanted to share that. Later on, if you want to share your thoughts on that, we're going to be taking some calls as well. But I want to kind of pivot to another facet in this story. And this is a woman who's lately, she's probably gotten more airplay than Taylor Swift, but for all the wrong reasons. There's a woman named Alyssa Gordon Heinerscheid. Alyssa Gordon-Heinerscheid, who's the VP of marketing for Anheuser-Busch, Bud Light specifically. And I'm going to have Mac the Nice find that sound for me if possible. She was quoted just weeks ago, basically dragging her own brand in a podcast. And she made comments like it was a brand that was declining and that it was fratty. And that was a pejorative, kind of derisive comment on her part. So we're going to play you that interview. I think it's a minute and a half long or so. But we're going to play you what the VP of marketing for Bud Light had to say.
I'm a businesswoman. I had a really clear job to do when I took over Bud Light. And it was, this brand is in decline. It's been in decline for a really long time. And if we do not attract young drinkers to come and drink this brand, there will be no future for Bud Light. So I had this super clear mandate. It's like, we need to evolve and elevate this incredibly iconic brand. And what I brought to that was a belief in, okay, what does evolve and elevate mean? It means inclusivity. It means shifting the tone. It means having a campaign that's truly inclusive and feels lighter and brighter and different and appeals to women and to men. And representation is at sort of the heart of evolution. You've got to see people who reflect you in the work. And we had this hangover. I mean, Bud Light had been kind of a brand of fratty, kind of out of touch humor. And it was really important that we had another approach.
So when you finish mowing your lawn and crack open a cold one, those are the thoughts that flood your mind. Those are the issues that are top of mind for you when you drink Bud Light. And she speaks of a dystopian future where there's no Bud. Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Budinator or something. I don't know, but that's all very deep. But I don't know what that has to do with the King of Beers. And obviously, there's a disconnect. There's a bit of a problem. It's kind of tantamount to, if the head of marketing for WWE came out with a push for nonviolence. You know what I mean? There's a disconnect there. But at any rate, we're going to talk about this some more. We're going to take a break. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We're going to come back, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more.
Governor Bill Lee says he will sign an executive order today impacting the sale of firearms in the wake of the Covenant school shooting. We'll get you the details coming up at 10 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Well, we talked about it yesterday. And obviously there's going to be, every time we see a tragedy like this, there's always a flurry of response and activity, some constructive, some not, but that will be an ongoing story. So back to the Bud Light thing, and I just want to kind of put a bow on it with this. You know, as I said, and we just listened to Alyssa Gordon-Heinerscheid, the VP of marketing, you know, the voice of your brand, basically, when you install someone, when you put someone in that seat, they are the voice of your brand. So they are speaking on behalf of not only, you know, your multi-billion-dollar brand, but, you know, every decision maker, every person that works loading cases of butter in a truck, and everybody in between. Imagine if you walked into, you know, Burger King and the folks behind the counter started insulting and denigrating you. And they did that to everybody that came in. You know, they started talking about how ugly you were and how ugly your kids were, and that, well, obviously that would be ludicrous. No one in their right mind would advocate that at a policy level within any business, any company, any brand. But how is it different when the head of marketing, the person responsible for creating and maintaining and stewarding brand ID for your company, actually has derision toward your brand audience? You know, because the people who are your customers, the people who buy your products, it's like an artist's audience is. I mean, the dynamics are the same thing. You can either make your brand a rock star, or you can make your brand a byword and an anachronism. So there's a way to keep the affinity groups that support your brand engaged through showing them, demonstrating to them that you understand them and that you're for them. And that's part of the buy-in. That's part of, you know, here's the dynamic. You know, people with any brand, and I don't care if you're a talk show host or a punk band or a politician or a soft drink, the dynamic works the same. You start out in anonymity and nobody cares. You know, any new brand starts out on an even footing. Nobody cares. And what you do, marketing is just influencing people toward decisions that benefit and highlight your brand in their hearts, their minds, their thoughts, that they feel they arrived at on their own, but you curated. That's what marketing actually is. So effective marketing takes people from, you know, ignorance to bystander status. You know, now they have an awareness of who you are, but you want to move them from bystander to fan. You want to move them across that line. You want to bring them behind that velvet rope and move them from being bystanders to being fans of your brand. Now, I can say this from experience, with the exception of some bands that, you know, that the band is abusive toward their fans. You know, if you're Slipknot, you can call your audience maggots, and they love it.
They're like, yeah.
Yes. But you know, probably not so much for, you know, Celine Dion or whatever. It's part of the deal that you love your audience and you let them know that they love you. And furthermore, that you realize that you are there for them. They're not there for you. They're not for your enjoyment. You get to live the life that you want to live, ostensibly, because you have an audience, because people care. So to not treat that audience with dignity and respect and value is just ludicrous. So, maybe we'll talk about this some more after the break. We're coming up on the hour. But this is dissociative to be abusive toward the fans of your brand, the people whose hard-earned money creates the revenue streams that pay your salary and give you job security. All right, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I'm Dez Dickerson. We'll be back in a bit.
Ten o'clock on the dot this Tuesday morning. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Got some traffic problems out there. First, you do have only one lane open again, 24 eastbound. This is in Murfreesboro due to construction. Then in Cheatham County, Fry Street eastbound at Bear Wallow Road is blocked by a crash there in Cheatham County. Governor Bill Lee just announced he's going to sign an executive order today impacting the sale of firearms and making sure people who want to hurt themselves or others don't get them.
This executive order, along with a new, stronger order protection law, will provide that next step in making sure that our communities are a safer place to live.
Yeah, Lee says the executive order will speed up the time it takes courts to report new criminal activity to the TBI and requires the TBI to figure out what the barriers are to keeping dangerous individuals from acquiring firearms and report back in 60 days. The death toll from yesterday's mass shooting in downtown Louisville has grown to 5, with 8 injured. M. Wynn says police identified the killer as 25-year-old former bank employee Connor Sturgeon, who was killed in a shootout with authorities.
Troy Haste says the gunman walked into their crowded conference room and started shooting.
And the lady next to me turned around and said, "What the hell?" And then he just started shooting.
Haste ran, and others scrambled to lock themselves in bathrooms and reportedly hide in the vault.
I thought there was like something like dropping because they were doing some construction. I got up there and the guy was like, "Run, there's a shooter."
Sources tell ABC News the gunman was recently given notice that he was going to be fired and that he left a note for his parents and friends indicating he planned to shoot up the bank.
And the White House again calling for a ban on assault-style weapons. Election 2024 news. Chicago will host the 2024 Democratic National Convention. Organizers have just announced. That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Dez Dickerson on Super Talk 99.7. I mean, I have this this strongly held belief when it comes to, bumper music that's used on talk shows. I've spent just tons of time on the road, not just during the touring years, but post that, and I've really spent more of my life on the business side of the business than on the stage side. But you spend a lot of I like road tripping. I mean, flying is great, but I like being in the car, and I like being able to listen to the radio and do all those things. So I've listened to a lot of talk radio in the car, logging those miles. And the thing that I realized is that when when a host had great music, I was predisposed, unconsciously, subconsciously, to thinking, this is going to be great. I'm going to listen to this. This must be a great show. But then conversely, if the music was lame, then I assumed the opposite. That if the music is lame, then the show's going to be lame. So, and that's completely anecdotal and whatever. But the music matters to me. The music matters. All right. So I'm trying to close on this whole topic of Bud Light and the brand incoherence. There's a disconnect where you have an audience that's definitely a long established and clearly defined audience in the main. I'm not saying that Democrats don't drink Bud just like Republicans, and I'm sure there's some Antifa folks that have a Bud Light or whatever. But the bottom line is, there's an established brand ID and there's an established brand audience, and no brand is well served by insulting their audience or deriding or dismissing. But at the same time, though, that's a characteristic of the unreality cohort, by the way, as we continue to frame kind of and map the DNA of that cohort. So I want to, later on in the next hour, we're going to take some calls. And if you have something to weigh in on with respect to this issue, if you have an opinion, something you want to share, a viewpoint, whatever the case might be, on this, even the broader issue of brands that don't seem to understand or care about their brand audience, then I want to hear from you. I mean, you think about it, in the big four professional sports, leagues, there have been some very obvious, very public missteps. I mean, we've had some things recently where, in one sport, there's kind of a lockstep with respect to certain messages that spill beyond the game into, the culture and into ideology. But then in other sports, it's been like, no, we're not having that. It's hard to make guys that for them, having your front teeth knocked out is a badge of honor. It's hard to make them do stuff. Have you noticed that? The NHL, there were some things that came down the pike with them where they said, no, we're not doing that, eh? It's just a different thing. So anyway, I want to hear from you if you've got something to say about that. So I'm going to move on to something else. So it's inevitable. It is inevitable. First, you know what? Even before I move on, though, I do want to comment quickly on Governor Lee's executive order, because we were just talking about this yesterday and talking about, how do you create, guidelines and so on that actually are common sense. And I consider common sense to be effective. Take measures that will actually achieve desired outcomes. And I talked about the fact that nobody on either side of the issue, nobody wants to see anyone else harmed. And this assertion by the unreality cohort that, and I just saw an article where David Hogg, why is he still a thing? David Hogg made the comment that Rick Scott of Florida was complicit in the murder of a friend of his that was a victim in the massacre yesterday. First of all, that's a despicable and ridiculous thing to say. But he seems to major in saying despicable and ridiculous things. But that is the mindset that the other side, that those people are part of the problem. Those people are complicit. Those people are accessories after the fact. That's just such a lie. No one wants to see any more bloodshed. No one does. So these steps that the governor is taking are right in line with what we were talking about yesterday. Nobody wants people who are clearly or obviously or have demonstrated a history of instability, of violence, whatever the case might be. No one wants to see firearms in the hands of people that fit that description. And, it's questionable. Listen, if they don't want me to operate heavy machinery on cold medicine, you can carry out the metaphor from there. So taking these steps are right in line with what we talked about yesterday. But I guarantee you, and I haven't seen any of the feedback or the blowback yet, but I guarantee you that quote unquote on the left, on that side of the issue, the governor won't get any love. Because the governor doesn't get any love on that side of the issue because he's the enemy on that side of the issue. And, and I don't do this often, but genuinely, I happened to, years ago, go to the same church and didn't know him well, but, we had some interaction and whatever. He's a genuinely good man. And that's a tough job. All of us sit back and we can take pot shots at whatever, public servant, a mayor, a governor, a president, and sometimes they're well-deserved. Don't get me wrong. Don't hear what I'm not saying. But I believe that Governor Lee is a man of integrity and a man of goodwill. And in taking these steps, he's looking to save lives. And all of us are. So anyway, I just wanted to make that comment. So, okay, moving on. So it's inevitable. First, they come for your guns. Then they come after your incandescent bulbs. Yep, it's true. Joe Biden wants your bulbs. Now, in fairness, this is something that actually dates back to W. It was George W. Bush who first, and I don't remember if it was an executive order, I don't remember what it was, but he was the first one to say, we're going to phase out incandescent bulbs. Now, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself. It's silly, and the reasoning has been, sort of well documented. But your bulbs should be your birthright as an American. Choose your bulb. One man, one bulb, whatever. So, the Biden administration is preparing to implement a sweeping nationwide ban on commonly used light bulbs as part of its energy efficiency and climate agenda. And the Department of Energy's rule reversed a Trump administration rule that sought to protect incandescent bulbs and to allow consumers to choose what products they want to purchase. And is that not the way it should be? Is it not called free enterprise, not mandated enterprise? You should be able to choose your bulbs. If you're not a danger to anyone, if we're not using hazardous waste bulbs, we should be okay. But in these regulations, the incandescent bulbs are prohibited from sale. They were finalized by the Department of Energy in April of 2002 and are slated to go into effect August 1st, 2023. The Department of Energy will begin full enforcement of the ban on that date, but it has already urged retailers to begin transitioning away from the light bulb type and in recent months began issuing warning notices to companies. So what's that about? People of Earth, give up your incandescent bulb. What's that about? Transitioning away. So if you're stockpiling or hoarding incandescent bulbs, by the way, and there was a great episode of Last Man Standing. I don't know if I have any Last Man Standing fans out there, but at this point, I think I've seen every episode because it's in syndication on 2 or 3 different channels. But there's a great episode where Mike Baxter and Chuck Larrabee, they get teed up with this guy who's like a black market incandescent bulb dealer, but he works in a hardware store. And they have to go in and do some kind of weird password, Sparky sent me or whatever. And they end up going out in the alley to do this deal like it's a drug deal to get these light bulbs. Well, I mean, it's kind of trending that way. So if you have stockpiled incandescent light bulbs, what are they going to do? Are they going to come? Are they tracking, SKUs and product numbers? Are they going to come to your house? Is the incandescent SWAT team going to come through your ceiling and come get your bulbs? I don't know, but that's kind of where they're heading. The lighting industry is already embracing more energy efficient products. And this measure will accelerate progress. It's always about progress to deliver the best products to American consumers. Well, if you have the best products, that's actually how free enterprise works. If you have the best product, the market decides. And if conversely you have the crummiest product, the market also decides. But this idea of them picking winners and losers, well, that's part of this whole unreality cohort. That's part of that narrative. That's part of that ideology. This measure will accelerate progress to deliver the best products to American consumers and build a better and brighter future. All puns intended, I'm sure, are. A brighter and better future. Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm said last year, isn't this the same lady that wants to take your gas stove and your air conditioner? I think she is. I'm not sure, but I think she is. So the incandescent bulb is on its way out. It's been a long time coming. And I'll be honest with you, there was a point where I started, back when in the Bush administration, they said that they were going to change the guidelines. I did, start kind of hoarding, collecting. Hoarding is too extreme a word. But, I've gone through them since then. See, here's the thing. I like incandescent bulbs. I prefer the light of incandescent bulbs. It feels kind of like, in the music business, in the recording business, there's always been a feeling that analog recording is more natural sounding. It's warmer than digital recording. Well, it's kind of the same with incandescent bulbs and halogen and LED and all these other things. For me, those light sources feel unnatural, and some of them make me feel like it's an interrogation scene in like an old James Cagney movie or something. It just feels weird. But so I don't know. I don't know. It can be something that people look at as not a big deal. But I do think it's a big deal because there's a larger issue. There's the slippery slope of, in all seriousness, first they come for your light bulbs, then they come for your firearms, then they come for your analog thermostat, and so on. Ultimately, the issue is central control of your lives, and not as some, dystopian kind of conspiracy theory. I promise you I'm not wearing a tinfoil hat. In fact, you can go on YouTube, I think, and actually watch. Because the truth is out there. And seriously, about being on camera, we're on radio. And I'm the new guy. I probably shouldn't be saying anything like this. But, video killed the radio star. And in fact, the irony of ironies is the very band that did that song, they were the epitome of video killing the radio star, because Trevor Horn, who was one of the guys in the duo called the Buggles, he was not a sort of a videogenic kind of guy. And even though that was the first video ever to air on MTV, if you take a 15-year-old today, by the way, and talk to them about a music video, they'll look at you like you have a third eyeball in your forehead. But that was a big thing. Isn't it true?
It's very true.
Because you can go, well, why wouldn't you just go on YouTube? Because we didn't have it. But video literally did kill the radio star. So, hopefully, there was the old saying of, he has a great face for radio. Hopefully this isn't destroying the fantasy by being able to see us, or being able to see me anyway. But anyway, Super Talk 99.7 WWTN, and we'll be back.
Governor Lee is proposing what he calls an order of protection law to keep weapon access from dangerous Tennesseans. We'll tell you about that and more coming up at 10:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
All right. Dez Dickerson. And no, I'm not the last man standing, but I love that show. Not cool. So we're talking about the banning, the outlawing of incandescent light bulbs. Now, for me, and I'm firmly solidly in the baby boom generation. I'm a baby boomer. There was on the first album by the Police, Outlandos D'Amore, there's a song called Born in the 50s. And at the time, because that was in the late 70s, it was an anthem, for baby boom sort of suburban punk rockers. We were born in the 50s. And the song kind of recounted all these things that were, part of our experience and the highlights of our history as baby boomers. But, as baby boomers, incandescent bulbs they're a big part of your life. You've been around them. They've been around you for a long time. And I'm just going to be just completely real. Of course, I guess I'm doing that all the time. But, when they first came out with like the curly Q bulbs, and then somebody told me that, you could use them like some villain's weapon, like in a superhero movie. You could break it and the gas would come out and, it would hurt people or whatever. I just didn't like those bulbs. I didn't like the light. I didn't like the way they looked. So again, incandescent bulbs, I have a relationship with those bulbs. But the more salient issue is that it's yet another example of this kind of imperial overreach. We will take your bulbs from you now, and we're doing it for your good, which is another feature of the unreality cohort. They know better than you what's better for you. But if you disagree, you're both evil and stupid. You're joyful and triumphant. So I want to read a little bit more from this article. Under the rules, incandescent and similar halogen light bulbs will be prohibited in favor of light-emitting diode, or LED, alternatives. While U.S. households have increasingly switched to LED light bulbs since 2015, because it's really hard to find anything else, fewer than half of households reported using mostly or exclusively LEDs. Darn straight. According to the most recent results from the Residential Energy Consumption Survey. I didn't participate in that survey. Did any of you? I don't know. Overall, 47% use mostly or only LEDs, 15% use mostly incandescent or halogens. I wonder how accurate these numbers are. And 12% use mostly or all compact fluorescent, CFL, with another 26% reporting no predominant bulb type. They're always undecideds, aren't they? The federal data showed. In December, the Department of Energy introduced separate rules banning CFL bulbs. I guess that's really bad. Paving the way for LEDs to be the only legal light bulbs to purchase. See, the energy consumption issue is the driver. And again, as is always the case with this sort of imperial overreach, they just want to funnel people toward one centrally determined and centrally managed alternative. So that it's not really an alternative. There's only one thing. There is only one way. If you watch The Mandalorian, it is the way. So really, all of this is informed by the sort of the climate, and I have to call it what it is. It really is climate religion. And I'm going to break that down here in a minute. But, this thing started out being about greenhouse gases and global warming. That's where it started out. And really, if we're going to be really real, we got to go all the way back to the 70s. I remember, I can see it plain as day, the cover of Newsweek that talked about there being a new ice age. I remember seeing the cover of that magazine in the middle of one of those storm of the century blizzard kind of things. This was still when I was back home in my home state of Minnesota. And I just remember being just frightened. And I was like in my late teens at that point in time, just frightened that it's true. It's going to be a new ice age. And we're all going to have to, live in caves with torches and whatever. Well, so it went from that to nope, sorry, strike that, reverse it. It's going to be heat. It's going to be global warming. It's going to be all the ice is going to melt and the oceans are going to boil. And now the problem is like it's the opposite end of the spectrum. Anybody see The Wiz? One of the worst movies of all time, but it's a treasure trove of metaphor and analogy. But Richard Pryor, who plays the Wizard of Oz in that movie, is this voice that booms from these loudspeakers at different random points during the day, and he makes these pronouncements. Well, that's kind of like what happened with this. Nope. Change of plan. We're not going to freeze, we're going to boil. So it went from that then to climate change because it was a little too hard nailing down it's all going to be about greenhouse gases and global warming. So climate change. And I thought we already had climate change. The original word was weather. But yeah, climate changes. We get that. So ultimately, though, this reached the level of being a religion. And you know what? We're going to take a break. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Dez Dickerson along with you today. And we're going to keep talking about this a little bit more.
I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Got another beautiful day on the way. Tomorrow will be much the same before changes come. We'll tell you about the full forecast in 2 minutes. Governor Lee today proposing what he calls a new order of protection law to keep firearms access from dangerous Tennesseans.
Our current law is proven and effective in many circumstances, especially with regard to domestic violence. But this new, stronger order of protection law will provide the broader population cover, safety from those who are in danger to themselves or to the population.
Governor says he'll also sign an executive order today that will require the courts to report new criminal information to law enforcement faster to guarantee the safe, lawful purchase of firearms. That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. I've had a financial radio show on WTN for over 20 years. But before that, for about the first 10 years of my career, I worked for a big investment firm. The name of the game was selling and getting assets under management. Then I was introduced to evidence-based investing, driven by academic research and not the sales process. Two big revelations. One was that investing in the stock market wasn't a gambling adventure. I had never thought about it that way. Think about when we invest, you're just gambling your money away and just throwing it into the casino. Well, investing in stocks is really just owning companies. And you think about some of the most successful people in the world are business owners, and you get to be a business owner when you invest in the stock market. It allows you to be part owner of the most successful companies in the world. The second had to do with how you were investing in those companies. In my former role, I was taught that my job was to use my skills to predict the future. Oh, crystal ball, what stocks or market segments are going to do best in the near future? If you listen to investing news sources and investment advisors, you'll find that making predictions is the rule rather than the exception. One recent study shows that 93% of professional managers underperformed the market over the past 15 years in their selection of large U.S. stocks. And it was over 95% that underperformed with small companies. Did you know that you could be tremendously successful as an investor without predicting the future? I believe the first step is education. However, it can't be just any education. We will help you understand what you're doing with your investments, why you're doing it, and what the basics are behind how things work. Then we make recommendations. I want you to be completely confident before you do anything. If that sounds like a winning game plan, set up a free 15-minute phone call at any of our 10 offices around Nashville. Go to paulwinkler.com to schedule a call today.
No, you know what? Are you ready? And that is the question. Are you ready? Yeah, a little bit of corn on the radio. My friend Brian Welch. Good dude.
Oh,
And
that's
Monkey
awesome.
too. And
That's
Monkey
cool.
too. Monkey's a good dude. So, and actually, I don't know if Head still lives here, but he lived here for a while, had a place here. Haven't spoken to him in a bit, but anyway, if you're listening, my brother, God bless. Hope you're doing well. So, all right, I could just listen to that song because I haven't heard that in a long time. They used to start their shows with that. I think they still do.
Ooh.
Are you ready? I
That's
know.
hype. Oh, man.
That's the way to start a show.
That's awesome.
It's ready or not. Here we come. So we're talking about the light bulb ban. We're talking about, though, the larger sort of issues. And as I was saying, it started out this sort of the and I have to call it what it is. It's kind of like it's the worldwide church of climate. It started out being about greenhouse gases and global warming. Everything about this particular ban has to do with the involuntary reduction of energy consumption. Now, those two issues, creating linkage between the two, is actually intellectually dishonest, because that's not about the rising of the sort of basal temperature of the earth. That's about forcing you to use less energy. And that's kind of a nebulous sort of a concept. Here's the thing. And you've heard this 1,000 times, just like I've heard it 1,000 times, but it's apropos, it fits, so let's go there. Right now, in the main, in this country, until things are changed, and they likely will be, most of our electricity is generated in coal-fired plants. Using coal, dirty, nasty, lumps of black digging out of the ground coal. So the vilification of fossil fuels that is part and parcel of the climate religion, because remember, that was in the beginning an adjunct to reducing the greenhouse gases, reducing the carbon emissions that were said to lead to these changes in the temperature of the planet and warming the planet. So let's switch to electric stuff. Well, but right now, we have an issue in that electricity is generated using fossil fuel. So is it more imperial overreach? Well, I say that it is. If the issue is reducing your energy consumption now, well, but what's that about? I thought that what you were having me do was so that, my grandkids wouldn't parboil one day. So instead, you want me to have an air conditioner that doesn't cool, and a stove that doesn't heat, and light bulbs that I don't want. But again, if you disagree, what's wrong with you? You're evil and stupid. If you speak blasphemy or heresy against the worldwide church of climate, it would be better for you to have been alive during the Spanish Inquisition. And here's the thing. Can I tell you what? I love science. I think science is a wonderful thing. I think the scientific method is a wonderful thing. And I'll say something else because while I'm stepping on toes, I might as well try to get everybody. I think one of the greatest illustrations of the objective and affirmative existence of a creator God is found in science. When you follow the science, ultimately it leads you to intelligent design. So it's not, if you speak anything, if you speak any blasphemy against the Worldwide Church of Climate, you are deemed to be a heretic who denies science. Well, that's not true. Because you can flip right back around and the same cohort will completely ignore science, blatantly ignore science with respect to other issues. And I'm not going to go there right now, but you know what I'm talking about. So, the light bulb issue. Let me read a little bit more from this article. According to this survey we talked about, LEDs are far more popular in higher income households, meaning the energy regulations will particularly impact lower income Americans. Well, again, I thought the unreality cohort were the champions of the little guy and the friend of the friendless and giving homes to the homeless and all that stuff. Well, but this is going to hurt them more. While 54% of households with an income of more than $100,000 per year used LEDs, just 39% of households with an income of $20,000 or less used LEDs. So here's a quote. We believe that further regulatory interference in the marketplace is unwarranted, given that more energy-efficient lighting sources, namely light-emitting diode bulbs, are already available for those consumers who prefer them over incandescent bulbs. A coalition of free market and consumer groups opposed to the incandescent bulb bans wrote in a comment letter to the Department of Energy last year. While LEDs are more efficient and generally longer lasting than incandescent bulbs, they currently cost more than incandescent bulbs and are inferior for certain functions, such as dimming, the letter continued. Consumers are best served by retaining the choice between incandescent bulbs and LEDs rather than regulating incandescent bulbs off the market. The groups added that estimates of the climate benefits of energy efficiency rules are speculative, assumption-driven, and prone to bias in the hands of agencies with a regulatory agenda. Is this not what we were talking about yesterday with respect to the presuppositions? We talked about the importance of identifying, seeking, and destroying the presupposition. Don't buy into it until you've examined the presupposition. Speculative, assumption-driven, and prone to bias. That you can pretty much frame the unreality cohort agenda in using those words, using that terminology. Continuing on, the Department of Energy's rule in April 2022, meanwhile, reversed a Trump administration rule that sought to protect incandescent light bulbs and allow consumers to choose which products they want to purchase. Former President Donald Trump was also personally opposed to LED light bulb adoption, remarking in 2019 that they are often more expensive, not good, and now this is a sense of humor here, and make him look orange. I love that sense of humor. Self-deprecating humor, I love that. Environmental groups that oppose the Trump administration's actions, which of course they do in a knee-jerk fashion, have cheered the Biden administration for cracking down on incandescent bulbs. We need to crack down on bulbs. So, again, we're going to, as we're coming up on the hour, and soon we're going to round the clubhouse turn, in our final hour, my final hour this morning, I want you to call in, and I want you to weigh in on the confiscation of your incandescent bulbs, or anything relating to that whole creeping imperial overreach, the creeping control of your life. We kind of moved from 1984 to Animal Farm somewhere in the last 8 years. Not to be alarmist, but just to be a realist. So I want you to call in. I want you to weigh in on that. Also want you to call in and weigh in on not just the Bud Light kerfluffle, but just this larger issue of brands and the misreading of the tea leaves and the jumping of the shark in terms of being completely disconnected with their core constituencies and those issues. So please call in the coming hour. In the meantime, we're going to take a break. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I'm Dez Dickerson, and we'll be right back. You know what?
Traffic troubles got 24 eastbound down to one lane in Murfreesboro for construction. And then in Cheatham County, got an accident reported to Fry Street eastbound at Bear Wallow Road. That may be a fatal crash. You got a police investigation underway. Governor Lee says he's going to sign an executive order today. It's in the wake of the Covenant School shooting. Details coming up at 11 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
All right, we're heading up toward the hour here. And, I think we're going to go ahead and we're going to open up the phone lines before 11. We're going to try to see if we can take at least one call before then. But in the meantime, I want to kind of wrap up this the great light bulb grab here. So, again, I had said that the climate community is really more of a climate religion. And here's why I say that. Here's what I base that on. It has classic elements. There's fallenness and sin. No, we have sinned and are sinning against the planet. There's redemption and absolution. All you have to do to receive your climate salvation is give up your nasty internal combustion engine car, give up your incandescent bulbs and your nice, crispy, cold air conditioner, et cetera, and you'll be absolved. And like any good religion, you can become a Pharisee of Pharisees and become a climate zealot that judges and indulges in the ministry of the bony finger regarding other people who are transgressors and who are not serving the God of climate with proper zeal and proper commitment. So it is a religion. And here's the deal. We live in a country where there's freedom of religion. But I'm not free to force my religion on you. I'm not free to institute a state religion. People misunderstand the separation of church and state. That doesn't have to do with the context in which it's used the vast majority of the time. It was a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to the Plymouth Brethren. And the inference was keeping the state out of the church, not the other way around. But I digress. We can't create and institute climate religion and force it on the nation any more than we can have, we can reconstitute the Church of England and make it the state church. So I'm going to read the last of this article, and we're going to try to get, if we can, one call in before the hour. So call in. If you got something to say about this, if you got something to say about the Bud Light thing, we're going to be going back to that as well. But here's the remainder of the article. We are long overdue to phase out inefficient, old-fashioned light bulbs as this progress was illegally delayed. They love to use that word in connection with the Trump administration. Illegally delayed by the Trump administration for more than 2 years. LED bulbs, which will replace the old incandescents, use 1/6 the amount of energy to deliver the same amount of light and last at least 10 times longer, said Joe Vukovich, an energy efficiency advocate at the Natural Resources Defense Council, or Defense Council, depending on what part of the country you're from. Over the last several months, the DOE, Department of Energy, has introduced a series of energy efficiency regulations impacting various home appliances, including gas stoves, ovens, washers, refrigerators, and air conditioners. Critics have blasted the rules as federal overreach and unnecessary, given that the industry has improved technology without government intervention. And that's the way the free market works. If you build a better mousetrap, that old adage. On his first day in office in January 2021, President Biden signed an executive order requiring the Department of Energy to make major revisions, because that was the most important thing to do on day one. Requiring the Department of Energy to make major revisions to current appliance regulation standards and standards set by the Trump administration. A month later, the agency began moving forward on more than a dozen energy-efficient rules impacting a wide range of appliances. Let's talk about it after the break. Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
It's 11 o'clock on the dot this Tuesday morning. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Got a couple of more days to go before the next best chance for rain. We're going to warm up every day until then. We'll give you the details during the full forecast in 2 minutes. Governor Lee is proposing a new order of protection law to keep firearms access from dangerous Tennesseans.
Our current law is proven and effective in many circumstances, especially with regard to domestic violence. But this new, stronger order of protection law will provide the broader population cover, safety from those who are in danger to themselves or to the population.
Governor says he's going to sign an executive order today that requires the courts to report new criminal information to law enforcement faster to guarantee what he calls the safe, lawful purchase of firearms. And lawmakers on Capitol Hill, Washington, D.C., pressing for all available information about the trove of seemingly highly classified leaked defense documents. Louis Martinez tells us there's reason to be concerned.
We're talking about dozens of pages of highly classified, highly sensitive documents. At least they appear to be that kind of document, talking about the war in Ukraine, talking about other countries, including Iran and North Korea and South Korea. And it also highlights the spying that takes place, that it's not just against America's adversaries, but also with America's friends to find out exactly what they're thinking about with these issues.
Gasoline prices up after OPEC Plus, which includes Russia, decided to cut production last week. That sent oil prices spiking, and already you're paying the price every time you fill up. Gas Buddy says in the past month, the average price of regular unleaded in Middle Tennessee went up nearly 20 cents to $3.42 a gallon. Still, though, Americans are paying 50 cents a gallon less than a year ago. That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Fleetwood Mac. Fleetwood Mac when they had not one, not two, but three guitar players, ladies and gentlemen. Classic intro. Love that song.
Yeah.
And one of the best lines in rock and roll.
I can't help about the shape I'm in. I can't sing, I ain't pretty, and my legs are thin.
Right there, ladies and gentlemen. Drop the mic. I can't sing, I ain't pretty, and my legs are thin.
Oh, that's good.
Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Oh, well. So, again, Dez Dickerson, Super Talk WTN, 99.7, all that good stuff. And appreciate you being with us. Actually, somebody wrote in on the Super Talk Super Text line, and had more intel on that Last Man Standing episode. The guy in the hardware store was Chewy, and the code was ripe strawberries. I love it. That was one of my favorite episodes. But we, earlier on, we were talking about the Bud Light situation. And there was a parody that Dan and the guys played earlier this morning. I heard it on the way in, and I want to hear it again. So we're going to play it. We've got it. We're going to play it and listen to it here.
Well, if it'll let me here. I don't know why it's not letting me. Give me 1 second.
No problem. So, in case you missed it, in case you were Rip Van Winkling somewhere, there's currently a controversy over well, here we go. Let's listen to it.
Here's to you, fake American hero.
Fake American heroes.
Today we salute you, crazy woke ad lady.
You're a crazy woke ad lady.
Only you can take an American institution and burn it to the ground.
Burn it down like a Marxist.
That's right. You knew just what to do to bring up those sales. It's the way we've always done it. Transgender in a can.
Transgenders in a can.
People said it was probably a bad idea, but who are you to listen to people? Probably don't even have a pronoun.
No pronouns.
So keep it going, woke ad lady. The destruction of civilization is right there at your fingertips. And not even a good drag show for kids can stop you now.
Fake American heroes.
Oh, that was great. And I wish I could remember the name of the guy. That I think they actually got the original guy from Survivor, from the band initially, to do those commercials. I don't know if they do anymore, but great stuff. All right, so we've talked about Bud Light and that whole controversy. We've talked about light bulbs, and I know that's with all the things that are going on in our world, that can seem like a small thing, but as clear thinkers, we see the end from the beginning. And the issue is, it's not just about light bulbs, but it's about the encroachment of government control, and you can term it other ways, in our lives. It's about being told how to live, what to do, etc. And there are people who pledge their lives, their fortunes, their sacred honor to establish this union, to establish this republic, and to dishonor that by going in, a different direction and abridging freedoms rather than protecting freedoms. That's something that, we use the term, well, so-and-so is rolling over in their grave. Well, if the founders were in their graves, they'd be rolling over this stuff. But we got Scott from Nashville on the line. Scott, what do you got for us?
Hey, love the show. Good morning. I have to ask on this light bulb issue. Do these people? We've been doing the light changeover, I guess, for a number of years now. Are there any stats to show that this is making any difference at all, or is this just? I mean, where's the proof that this is even working? I'll take your call over there.
Thanks for calling in. You know, there were some statistics that we quoted in the article that I read, and again, I really don't know where the internals, where the data points are being extracted. So yeah, they quoted numbers about efficiency and about this and about that, but I don't know that I saw in the article any definitive data with respect to the change, and that's what I think I'm hearing in your question. The change in energy consumption that's measurable, from the time that the first, curly fry light bulb appeared until now. So, and I guess, again, back to, as clear thinkers, what we're focused on first and foremost is the presupposition. Is it good to conserve energy? Well, yeah, sure it is. We had a few during that like hyper cold snap at Christmas time. We had a few heating bills. We moved into a place back in September that has electric heat. I prefer gas heat, but it has electric heat. And during that like super, super cold snap, our bills spiked. They went sky high. So the financial ramifications and benefits of lowering our consumption, well, yeah, obviously that's a positive thing, and nobody has a problem with that. The issue is being forced to conform to a standard set by someone other than, by unelected bureaucrats and other people, or as the result of the stroke of a pen, as opposed to representative, the legislative process is it's meant to carry forth. So, we can talk about the benefits of it, but at the end of the day, the larger issue is, is it your light bulbs today, your car tomorrow, your school the next day, et cetera, et cetera. We've got John in Springfield on the line. John, thanks for joining us. John, you there?
Oh, I am. Sorry, it glitched. The thing that the leftists don't figure into all this, okay, it's a 1/6 the amount of energy, but we leave the lights on a whole bunch longer and create light pollution more, thus using more energy, just like my dishwasher. It uses less per load, but I have to wash it twice, or I have to rinse my dishes before I wash them, thus using a lot more energy, a lot more water, a lot more everything else.
Absolutely. And to some degree, and thanks for your call, to some degree, the light bulb thing, that's kind of the camel's nose in the tent, because it's an easy enough thing for people to dismiss as, hey, it's trivial. Hey, it's just light bulbs. But at the point where, say, for example, your washing machine is mandated to be, this new government standard or whatever, that, it's being said that the clothes don't come clean. And it's being said of with these new standards for air conditioning that, it doesn't properly cool. So it becomes more than just light bulbs. It becomes a pretty severe encroachment on living the way that you've been able to live, again, by choice in the past. And that is the issue that ultimately kind of separates, left from right, red from blue, however we want to parse it. Because there are people who value and want to preserve and defend freedom, the freedom to choose. As I said yesterday, we have the right, we have the freedom, if we choose, to be ignorant, to be deluded, to be whatever. We have the right to do so. I have the right. You have the right to remain stupid. What you say can and will be used against you. The issue is that right being abridged and it being replaced with some sort of central governance that takes more and more of those decisions and that decision-making power from you and makes decisions for you. And we're not talking about, tinfoil hats and black helicopters and, because we can get as far out with this as people want to get. And I try to stick with the principle. I try to stick with the issue. And the implications, that's up to everybody else to see. But that's what being a clear thinker is about. It's not the party platform, it's clear thinking. And what is part of the party platform, does it align with clear thinking and the principles of clear thinking or not? We've got James in Ashland City. James, welcome aboard. What do you have for us? James, you're up.
Yes. I was calling about the LED light bulb comments.
Mm-hmm.
It was our illustrious Vice President Gore that tried to mandate the compact fluorescence years ago, claiming that would be so much better, but then they found that a lot of the things they had and the disposal of those was a problem because of the mercury, et cetera. Now with the LED bulbs, what's interesting is they claim that they last 10 times longer than an incandescent, and claiming 50,000 hours for a bulb. I've used several of them, and within a matter of 6 or 8 months, I'm replacing them. So none of that holds water.
Well, and as is usually the case, whenever there is government overreach, there ends up being 2 steps forward and 12 steps back, right? Was it Ronald Reagan who said you should fear the words, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. We seldom see improvement take place when these kinds of measures are taken and these moves are made. But James, thank you so much for your call and for your point. And it's interesting. So far, 100% of the calls that we're getting are about the light bulbs. Interesting, because for some folks, the light bulbs are like, whatever, they're light bulbs. And the Bud Light issue is a little bit, sizzlier and bigger names attached to it, et cetera. So to some degree, I find it interesting that people actually have more to say. And you know what I think that comes down to? The things that actually impact us where we live are more important to us.
100%.
And that's why so many times elections are won and lost based on, the so-called kitchen table issues. When, in fact, and again, here's why clear thinking is of the essence. Because there are things that have far greater and far more grave implications for our future if we don't deal with them at the point where the camel's nose is in the tent. And I, for one, want to advocate that we begin to tailor our thinking toward looking, yes, let's be concerned about light bulbs, but let's also look beyond that. Let's recognize that we need to see the end from the beginning. We've got Deborah in the borough. Hey, I'm an adjunct at MTSU, so I'm in the borough from time to time. Deborah, how you doing? Glad to have you with us. What do you have for us?
Thank you. Regarding old Mulvaney there, It is one thing with the beer. I think they've gone totally off brand. But then you've got him promoting sports bras when we've got nothing there for the sports bra. But even worse are the tampons. Because I don't care what hormones he takes, I don't care what surgeries he has, he will never, ever have a need for tampons. Ever.
True that. And as I was saying yesterday, one of the chief sort of features of that unreality cohort is this "it is if we say it is" thing. So again, on the one hand, well, follow the science. Okay, well then let's always follow the science. And then if you follow the science all the time, then it's, pay no attention to that man with the tampon, I guess. But valid points all the way around. Thank you so much for your call. And it's not about what they say it's about most of the time. And Deborah hit it on the head. The issue here is just a major, major brand getting so far off brand, trying to be relevant in a cultural conversation that we've all been told is of the utmost importance, when what people care about, again, is light bulbs more than they care about that. Let's see, who have we got? And, you know what? We got a break is what we got. I'm so engrossed in this that I missed it. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Dez Dickerson will be right back.
Governor Bill Lee proposing new action to protect against mass shootings and new information about the weapon purchased in the Louisville mass murder yesterday. Details at 11:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
All right. And one of our earlier callers had questioned whether or not there was data on, actual savings due to these changes in light bulbs. We got a text from one of our listeners who said the company I work for, large food distribution company, converted our entire 900,000 square foot property to LED, and our power bill has increased by $2,550 per month. So there we go. There's your answer.
Gosh.
There's your answer. And what were we just saying about, government overreach and the changes that it creates costs us money more often than it saves us money. But anyway, we got Scott on the line. Scott, good to have you. Join us.
Yeah.
Come aboard. What do you got?
Yes, it's about the LED lights. I had to change the light fixture out this weekend, the whole 4-foot light fixture, and of course it went to the local dump and had to replace it with a whole nother fixture, not the light. And when it comes to Bud Light, I swapped the Coors Light. And I'll leave it to you.
Somebody also mentioned that way more people use light bulbs than drink Bud Light. That's one of our text comments. So, and that is true, And at the end of the day, if something intersects our lives more often or more presently than other things do, then those things tend to be top of mind with us. But ultimately, and I'm going to keep repeating this, it's the issues that these things lead to that we need to, thinking ahead, seeing the end from the beginning, deal with them appropriately. Here's one of the questions that I have, actually, just comes to mind. We here in Middle Tennessee, we've seen just a literal flood of humanity from other parts of the country. And there's a short list of states, about 8 states. And out of those 8 states, it really predominantly it's like 2 or 3 states. And California is the number one state from which people have kind of, migrated. We have internal migration from California to Tennessee. And, ostensibly for a lot of folks, it was to escape the madness. Not for everybody. For some folks, it was the lure of, you can get a house for how much? You know what I mean? But for a lot of people, it was legislative insanity, among other things, that was their impetus for coming. So, I'm curious, people who have lived through this, continuum of, they make a decision and they pass a law, and then we go from here to there, and then they kind of, double down on that, then they double down on that, then they double down on that, and then eventually, your home is unlivable. And for a lot of folks, they decided that, California, a beautiful place. I've spent tons of time in California in years past, but I also saw it over time decline with respect to livability because of these issues. And at some point, if we don't stem the tide of what happens in our home, then we lose our home, and that's an unfortunate thing. Talking about the Bud Light controversy, and I would have us play the audio of Kid Rock shooting up I think, what was it, a case of Bud Light, but we don't have a bleeped version, and there's a lot of bleeping in it, so we can't do that. But we're talking about that. We're talking about incandescent light bulbs. But with respect to the Bud thing, I really want to hear from people who have instances top of mind of other brands that have made similar choices, similar brand choices, similar marketing choices that have really overlooked and or insulted their customers, their constituents, whatever the case might be, because they have chosen an agenda. They've chosen a social, a cultural, an ideological agenda over the people that support their brand, the people that spend money on their products, et cetera, et cetera. I want to hear from you. I'd love to hear some opinions with respect to, some of the things that the NFL has chosen to do, or not so much the NBA to some degree, but the NFL I think has been the most visible in terms of really integrating a social and cultural agenda with the product that they put on the field, because that's what it is. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a sport, but it's entertainment, and it's big time entertainment, and it's big money entertainment, and that's all right. Oh, you know what? We have a break coming up, don't we? See, I get so deeply into it that I forget the breaks. But you're on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I'm Dez Dickerson, and we will be right back.
I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Another sunny day today, then a starry night. We'll repeat tomorrow before changes come, but nothing too drastic. We'll tell you about it during the full forecast in 2 minutes. Governor Bill Lee today proposing new action to protect against mass shootings.
We can all agree that it is possible and it is important that we find a way to remove individuals who are a threat to themselves or to our society, to remove them from access to weapons.
He says he'll sign an executive order requiring faster sharing of criminal information between the courts and law enforcement. Lee's also asking lawmakers to create a new order of protection law to restrict access to firearms, similar to what he says is already effective in domestic violence cases. Meanwhile, in Kentucky, police say the downtown Louisville shooter legally purchased the AR-15 last week, which they say he used to kill 5 co-workers and injure 8 others yesterday, including a police officer. That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. I've had a financial radio show on WTN for over 20 years. But before that, for about the first 10 years of my career, I worked for a big investment firm. The name of the game was selling and getting assets under management. Then I was introduced to evidence-based investing, driven by academic research and not the sales process. 2 big revelations. One was that investing in the stock market wasn't a gambling adventure. I had never thought about it that way. Think about when we invest, you're just gambling your money away and just throwing it into the casino. Well, investing in stocks is really just owning companies. And you think about some of the most successful people in the world are business owners, and you get to be a business owner when you invest in the stock market. It allows you to be part owner of the most successful companies in the world. The second had to do with how you were investing in those companies. In my former role, I was taught that my job was to use my skills to predict the future. Oh, crystal ball, what stocks or market segments are going to do best in the near future? If you listen to investing news sources and investment advisors, you'll find that making predictions is the rule rather than the exception. One recent study shows that 93% of professional managers underperformed the market over the past 15 years in their selection of large U.S. stocks. And it was over 95% that underperformed with small companies. Did you know that you could be tremendously successful as an investor without predicting the future? I believe the first step is education. However, it can't be just any education. We will help you understand what you're doing with your investments, why you're doing it, and what the basics are behind how things work. Then we make recommendations. I want you to be completely confident before you do anything. If that sounds like a winning game plan, set up a free 15-minute phone call at any of our 10 offices around Nashville. Go to paulwinkler.com to schedule a call today.
And that's the question. Do you really want it? Do you really want control of your light bulbs, your lawnmower, your washing machine? Or you just want to let somebody else tell you what to do, how to do it, when to do it? We got Doug on the line in Nashville. Doug, welcome aboard. What do you have for us?
Hey, Dez, it's great to talk with you.
Thank you.
I know you've been in Middle Tennessee since the late 80s, early 90s.
Yes.
And it really warms my heart to see what a great influence that, like, the radio and the conservatives have had on you since you've been here.
Well, awesome. Thank you.
And I just had a comment about your time in the Revolution.
Mm-hmm. And he's talking about the band, The Revolution, by the way. I wasn't, I wasn't with the Weather Underground or anything. It's a different thing.
Right, exactly. It's about Wendy Malvoin, and it says, like, I was reading on Wikipedia, in 1981, Prince would stay in L.A. at Lisa's house, and it says that one night he overheard her Wendy playing in Lisa's room, and asked who that was. And it says a few days later, when Dez Dickerson did not show up at a sound check, Prince asked Wendy to play his guitar and asked her to join the band.
So here's the thing about Wikipedia. Wikipedia does not fact check. Wikipedia is sort of publicly curated. They've made changes over the years and supposedly, allegedly, building in more accuracy over time. But and who was it? There's some watchdog. I suddenly sound like I was from Brooklyn. Some watchdog that examines different search engines, online sites, etc., with respect to fact checking. And Wikipedia, and actually this came out in the Twitter files, that Wikipedia is kind of up there with Twitter and others in terms of hanky-panky behind the scenes. But with that said, and I don't want to get too far off topic, but I'm going to answer your question. We used to do these epically long sound checks. 2, 3, sometimes 4 hours long. And, the relationship that Prince and I had was, I was just kind of the right-hand guy, and I could speak my mind, and we were friends. He was my boss, but we were friends. So on the other hand, I preferred to just kind of go in really quickly. I just wanted to see the arena, even though it was going to look differently that night. I wanted to go out on stage. I wanted to stand in my spot. I wanted to hear my monitors. I wanted to hear my stage volume, all those things. And then I wanted to go back to the hotel until the show. So there came a point where I had that conversation with Prince, and I said, well, I'd really rather if we can just do an abbreviated sound check, and if I can just be given my leave, that'd be great. And he agreed to it. We were friends. And Wendy was on the road with Lisa. And there was, at that point in time, hey, you want to stand in? But, the Wikipedia sort of biopic, I don't know what screenwriter wrote that, but no, that's not what happened. But thanks for your call, Doug. All right. So a little bit of everything this morning. So I want to go back to our text line because one of the listeners wrote in and said, regarding light bulbs, I'd imagine cities and municipalities would see greater savings. That's with the light bulb changeover. But those savings haven't reduced taxes. Government finds another place to waste money. Well, interesting, because with the other text that we got, the person that shared that their distribution center, the company they work for, 900,000 square foot facility. That's a big facility. That they actually, it's costing them more money. Wherever cities, municipalities, et cetera, are mandating these changes, are they getting similar results? Are the costs going up or are the costs going down? If the costs are going down, well, I don't know. I don't ever expect any kind of savings to be passed down as tax savings. And honestly, I don't really expect savings. I know that there are public servants of integrity and people who take seriously the stewardship that they've been given in being servants of the people. But, there's some good people that get into office, whatever office that might be, the city comptroller or whatever, and they kind of forget what it was they were about and what they campaigned on that put them there in the first place. So, I all that to say, I don't ever really expect that there's going to be money saved and that there's going to be, even when there's deficit reduction, that there's going to be benefit, back to the taxpayer in some way, shape, or form. Every once in a while that happens. Didn't Sarah Palin do something back in the day kind of along those lines? But, ultimately, decisions that are made at that level, decisions that are made with respect to how to spend the people's money, it's all a bit arcane anyway. What's done supposedly, allegedly in the light, we've increasingly gotten to the place where even that can be undone. Even that can be subject to what? No, said what? We never said that. No. It is if we say it is. And so, I think that at the end of the day, and I'm saying that a lot today, do you really want it? Do you really want, government of the people, by the people, for the people, et cetera? And I'm not sharing that as a slogan. I'm bringing us back to, as clear thinkers, I'm bringing us back to the fundamental elements of the nation that we are, and the lives that we have available to us to live. Because we are the ones that make the choice. We are the ones that have the power to, in the immortal words of the Beastie Boys, fight for our right to party or our own party or whatever it is, or we can sit back. We can be the folks that, they say there are three groups of people. There are people that make things happen. There are people that watch things happen. And then there are people that eventually look up and say, what happened? Well, I believe that for those of us who are clear thinkers, and if you want to use the term conservative, if you want to use the term, whatever, then we should be the people who are in that first group. We should be the people that make things happen. And the things that we make happen should be the things that were ensured by the founders. The things that we should make happen are the preservation of our form of government and all that produces, the way of life that it produces, and to stand up and to not allow ourselves to be defined by people who would just say otherwise, that would create out of whole cloth accusation and indictment and try to paint you and paint me as, lunatics and miscreants and insurrectionists and all these other things. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to break, and we're going to take a couple more calls afterward, and we're going to wrap it up. And we're going to head on into the clubhouse here for the 19th hole. Dez Dickerson on Super Talk 97 WTN.
If you want me to stay, I'll be around today to be available for you.
Sly and the Family Stone.
I'm about to go, and then you'll
If you
know
want me to stay, one of the most
I got to be me.
devastating grooves in the history of the bass guitar right there.
It's all about. You can't take me for granted and smile.
You know, I had opportunity to hang out a little bit with a guy named Larry Graham who played bass at Sly and the Family Stone, and who was like, you know, the creator of a style of bass playing that has affected thousands of people. Anyway, I love that song. You know, is there a message in that song? I don't know. You might have to play it backwards now. So, you know, what one listener texted in like an entire list of, you know, the places and brands that they boycott, that they're against. It is a long list, and they have, you know, solid reasoning for each one. And I wanted to just share as we're kind of, you know, again headed toward the clubhouse here, that I personally, I don't necessarily advocate fully boycotting. I do obviously advocate rather, you know, buy and spend your conscience. Do what you personally, in your convictions and in your own integrity, have peace with doing. I do believe, though, one thing that I would love to see, and this is, you know, this would take a level of you know, organization and you know, administration that would require some resources, I think, to do it effectively. But I do advocate what I would call strategic economic pressure. Boycotts, the left utilizes boycotts to hurt people, to hurt businesses, to hurt individuals. You've had situations where people have been fired and lost livelihoods, where companies have been, you know, forced to make decisions, where boards of directors have fired people based on pressure. I'm not advocating those sort of destructive outcomes, but I am advocating the constructive outcomes of those companies who are betraying their customer base, those brands, those companies who are at cross purposes, which is really, it's a dishonoring, disrespectful, and abusive thing to take somebody's money and then just kind of spit in their faces. So strategic economic pressure, what do I mean by that? Well, defund them through a collective, concerted effort to just, you know, embargo sales of that product to the degree that you have enough group economic power to do that. And I believe there are enough clear thinkers that if we band together and you know, sort of kind of like in Ghostbusters, you take the streams of the ghost thing and put them together, you know, we can do some damage. And it's a colloquial or a euphemism. I don't literally mean damage, but we can get people to see the light. In some cases, in some instances, the people at the top won't care and don't care, and, you know, seem to continue to work at cross purposes with themselves and their own revenues. And certain boards of directors, I don't know how they're allowing what they're allowing. And there are companies, there are massive companies that come to mind. Someone mentioned Disney in one of the texts. And that is one of those that comes kind of top of mind, because Walt Disney, the ultimate, the man who created the happiest place on earth, I don't know if he'd be happy about what, you know, Bob Iger and some of the others have done with Disney, and what they've done in terms of ceding creative control to really a small handful of people that are very aggressive in the agenda or agendae that they represent. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in yesterday and today. It's been a blessing. It's been fun. It's been exciting. At times it's been terrifying.
Is this your first time hosting a show?
Absolutely, my first time ever hosting a show.
I mean, you couldn't tell, man. That's what I'll say.
Well, man, thanks for that. See that's why I call him Mac the Best. That's why this man has been done. He's living up. Because it's one of those things where I've been interviewed and I've been on radio.
Of course.
This is a whole different thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
This is a whole different thing. And it's like a lot of times, like I've seen people, for example, like record people that have watched great mix engineers mix records and think, well, I could do that. So they come in after hours and sit down at the console, and it's a bloody mess because it's not as easy as one would think it is. So again, I have great respect for the people here that are such masters and such great professionals. I want to thank Dan Mandis for giving me the opportunity to sit in this chair. And for seeing something in me, so maybe I'm the Adam Thielen of radio. Adam Thielen, I'm a huge Vikings fan. So
I didn't know that. That's great.
Huge. So the most infamous, most successful walk-on, or free agent in terms of the NFL history, I think. So anyway,
he's awesome.
He's awesome.
And I wanted my Chiefs to sign him.
Well, they should have. That would have been a great place.
Would have been fun. Yeah, would have been fun.
He knows how to get open. I mean, he's lost his step, but at any rate. So, thank you so much. Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Dez Dickerson. And, see you out there in the traffic. Have a good day. See you next time. Bye-bye.